Hello and welcome to another 9-minute Bible study. Our starting point, Acts chapter 13. Let's start with verse 32. And we, the we being Paul and Barnabas, they are in the synagogue in Antioch in Pisidia. Here they are teaching and preaching about Jesus Christ, the Son of the living God. In this Jewish synagogue, no one up to this point had heard about Jesus. This is their introduction to who Jesus is and what Jesus did, how it will affect what they're doing now and what's going to happen in the future. And we, Paul and Barnabas, declare unto you, those in the synagogue in Antioch and Pisidia, glad tidings, which would mean good news, which would mean the gospel message. The gospel message is being preached on this day. How that the promise which was made unto the fathers, let's hold there for a second, throughout the Old Testament, the premise of the Christ dying on the cross and being raised from the dead was written about and was revealed to the Old Testament prophets. Now, in the days of the Apostle Paul, the meaning of these prophecies had been revealed unto the people. Verse 33, God hath fulfilled the same unto us their children, in that he hath raised up Jesus again. The important point here is what? The resurrection of Jesus from the dead. God has fulfilled the same unto us, their children. The resurrection of Jesus that God told the prophets about happened during the lifetime of Paul and Barnabas and those who are listening to him on this day. The second part of verse 33. As it is also written in the second psalm, Thou art my son, this day have I begotten thee. Thou, meaning who? Jesus. My equals who? God the Father. Jesus are God's Son. So who is Jesus? The Son of the living God. This day have I begotten thee. This connects to the first part of the verse where it said, in that he hath raised up Jesus again. So, what is the Apostle Paul saying here? That we know for certain that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of the living God. How? When God raised Jesus from the dead. But let's connect this to what actually happened when God raised Jesus from the dead. This was not a case where Lazarus was raised by Jesus, walked out of the grave, was still in the same body, then died years later. Jesus resurrects from the dead in a new, glorified body. A body that will not die, a body that will not face corruption. This is a totally new and different concept because God raised Jesus from the dead. Because God raised Jesus in a new, glorified body. We know that the prophecy written in Psalm chapter 2, verse 7 has come to pass. This day, Resurrection Day, have Jesus been raised by God the Father, been begotten by him. Verse 34. And as concerning that he raised him up from the dead, here we go again, God the Father raised Jesus up from the dead. Now no more to return to corruption, meaning that Jesus, now that he is raised from the dead, will not die again. When Jesus was raised from the dead, he was raised to life from that point going forward into eternity. Why can we hope for the same thing? Because God has already done this to Jesus. And because this has already happened to Jesus, For us who believe in the Christ across the resurrection, this will happen to us. The last part of the verse. He said on this wise, this would be God the Father speaking once again, I will give you, who's the you? Jesus the Son, the sure mercies of David. All the prophecies regarding the seed that's going to come from David and sit on the throne. This was fulfilled in Jesus. When was this ultimately fulfilled? When God raised Jesus from the dead. The point that the Apostle Paul is making, now 2 points, it is that the resurrection of Jesus is the proof that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of the living God. On to verse 35. Wherefore he, God the Father, saith also in another psalm, chapter 16, verse 10, Ye shall not suffer your Holy One to see corruption. God the Father shall not suffer or allow your Holy One, his Son Jesus, to see corruption. Look what happened. Jesus, he died on the cross. What happened 3 days later? God raised Jesus from the dead. Why is this so important? Because in that 3 days, a body would not have yet decomposed. Well, what do we see here? Jesus being raised before the physical body would begin to decompose, because the resurrection happened in 3 days. This prophecy was fulfilled, specifically meaning that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of the living God. The resurrection of Jesus on the 3rd day, as prophesied by Jesus. All of this put together proves that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of the living God. Let's look at verse 37, where it said, verse 36, For David, after he had served his own generation by the will of God, fell on sleep, died, and was laid unto his fathers, buried, and saw corruption, because he was in the dead way more than 3 days. Actually, when this was written, David's still in the grave. Now, even now, he's still in the grave. So what does this mean? Yes, this prophecy that David received did not refer to David, verse 37, but he, whom God raised again. Who was the one whom God raised again? Jesus, his Son, saw no corruption. The 3 prophecies that the Apostle Paul mentioned, all 3 of these prophecies were fulfilled in Jesus Christ. Because these 3 prophecies were fulfilled, this is our proof that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of the living God. This is just not one random prophecy. These are 3 specific prophecies fulfilled by Jesus. The proof, he is the Christ, the Son of the living God. And we will pick up with this in our next lesson.